103rd Illinois General Assembly is officially underway as state lawmakers were sworn in this afternoon. Governor J.B. Pritzker presided over the Senate inauguration, and Secretary of State Alexi Janulius led the House ceremony. Capitol Bureau Chief Mike Militich is live in Springfield tonight with the latest. Good evening, Mike.
Daniel, good evening. The 2022 election season sent several lawmakers out the door, and many others decided to retire before this General Assembly. But the Democrats still hold supermajorities in both chambers.
The House of Representatives of the 103rd General Assembly of the State of Illinois will come to order.
The House of Representatives filled an auditorium at a university in the capital city, while senators took their oath of office in the old state capitol. It's an exciting moment for lawmakers new and old as they embark on a new chapter for the Illinois General Assembly.
Each one of us serves roughly 250,000 people back home, 250,000 people, working families and working folks. What is best for them? What is best for the millions of working families across our state?
Senate President Don Harmon was elected to a second term leading his chamber and noted the lessons senators could learn from former President Abraham Lincoln. Harmon and Senate Republican leader John Curran hope their colleagues will work in a bipartisan manner to create a better Illinois.
Our agenda is focused on helping Illinois families and job creators rebuild and renew opportunity in Illinois. We need real, substantive, and sound economic policies that are going to help improve the lives of the people in our state.
The House of Representatives saw significant turnover following the November election, with over 20 new members taking the oath of office. Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch says he will work with Democrats and Republicans in good faith to pursue the common good.
Everyone committed to upholding the values of our democracy will be my ally in defense of government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Lawmakers are also celebrating the historic election of the first woman ever to lead a House caucus. Toni McCombie says Illinois is a state of possibilities and opportunity. However, she feels the system of checks and balances is at risk with increasing one-party control of state government.
We must prioritize the co-equal nature of our government and prioritize fulfilling the constitutional duty, one which supersedes party loyalty or providing those checks and balances.
Lawmakers will be back to work tomorrow to set the chamber rules for the next 2 years. For now, reporting live in Springfield, Mike Militich, WGEM News.